Whispers in the walls. The old Blackwood house stood silently at the end of Willow Street, its weathered Victorian facade a stark contrast to the well-maintained homes surrounding it. Sarah Hughes stood before the iron gates, key in hand, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. At 28, this was her first home purchase. A steal, the realtor had said, given its size and the property's history. History. Sarah scoffed at the thought. Every old house had its stories, its urban legends. The Blackwood house was no different. Tales of disappearances, of strange noises in the night, of shadows moving against the laws of nature, all dismissed as the overactive imaginations of bored small-town residents. As Sarah pushed open the creaking gate, a chill ran down her spine. She attributed it to the unseasonably cool autumn air and pressed on, gravel crunching beneath her feet as she approached the front door. The interior was musty, thick with the scent of age and neglect. Sarah's footsteps echoed through the empty rooms as she explored her new home. Despite the gloom, she could see the potential. A little paint, some new furnishings, and this place would be transformed. As night fell, Sarah settled into her sleeping bag in what would become her bedroom. The renovation work would begin tomorrow, but for now, she was content to dream about the future in her new home. It began as a whisper, so faint she thought she'd imagined it. Sarah's eyes snapped open, her body tense as she strained to listen. There it was again. A soft, indistinct murmur seeming to come from within the walls themselves. "Hello?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling. The whispers ceased immediately, leaving her in oppressive silence. Sleep eluded her that night, her mind racing with rational explanations. Old houses settled, pipes groaned, wind whistled through cracks. Yet none of these explanations could quiet the nagging dread growing in the pit of her stomach. The next few days passed in a blur of contractors, paint swatches and furniture deliveries. Sarah threw herself into the renovation work, desperate to transform the gloomy interior into something bright and modern. Yet no matter how much she painted or rearranged, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was always in her peripheral vision, a flicker of movement, a shadow where none should be. But whenever she turned to look, there was nothing there. The whispers, too, continued. They never formed words she could understand, but their cadence suggested conversation, or perhaps conspiracy. A week into her stay, Sarah woke in the middle of the night, her body drenched in cold sweat. The whispers were louder now, more insistent. As she lay frozen in her bed, she realized with dawning horror that they were coming from directly above her. With trembling hands, Sarah reached for her phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the ceiling. What she saw made her blood run cold. There, etched into the paint as if by invisible claws, were words. "We see you." Sarah scrambled out of bed, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She ran for the bedroom door, only to find it wouldn't budge. The knob turned, but it was as if something on the other side was holding it shut. The whispers grew louder, surrounding her now. From the corners of her eyes, Sarah saw the shadows deepen and move, taking on monstrous shapes. She screamed, pounding on the door with all her might. Suddenly the door flew open and Sarah tumbled into the hallway. Without looking back, she ran down the stairs and out of the house, not stopping until she reached her car. As she sped away from Blackwood House, Sarah's mind raced. She couldn't stay there, not after what she'd seen. But who would believe her? How could she explain the inexplicable? The next day, Sarah returned with 2 police officers. She'd managed to convince them to do a walkthrough, citing concerns about a break-in. As they explored the house, Sarah's sense of dread grew. Everything was as she'd left it. No sign of the writing on the ceiling, no jammed doors, no evidence of her terrifying night. The officers were sympathetic, but clearly skeptical. They suggested stress and an overactive imagination, exacerbated by spending time alone in an old house. Sarah nodded numbly, knowing how it all sounded. After they left, Sarah stood in her bedroom, staring at the now unmarked ceiling. Had she imagined it all? Was she losing her mind? A soft whisper behind her made her spin around. There, in the mirror, she caught a glimpse of a pale, gaunt face grinning malevolently before it vanished. Sarah's scream echoed through the empty house as she ran out, leaving everything behind. She didn't stop running until she reached the police station, babbling about whispers and faces in mirrors. Sarah's frantic report at the police station was met with a mixture of concern and skepticism. The officers, while sympathetic to her obvious distress, found no evidence to support her claims of supernatural activity. After a few hours of questioning and a cursory examination by a police psychologist, Sarah was released with a recommendation to seek counselling for stress and possible hallucinations. Shaken and exhausted, Sarah checked into a small motel on the outskirts of town. She couldn't bear the thought of returning to the Blackwood house, nor did she want to burden her friends with her seemingly irrational fears. As she lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, Sarah tried to make sense of what had happened. Sleep came fitfully, punctuated by nightmares of whispering shadows and malevolent faces. She woke frequently, each time relieved to find herself in the dingy but blessedly normal motel room. But as the night wore on, a familiar sensation began to creep over her, the feeling of being watched. Sarah's eyes snapped open, her body rigid with fear. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of a streetlight filtering through the thin curtains. As her eyes adjusted, she realized with mounting horror that the shadows in the corners of the room seemed deeper, more substantial than they should be. A whisper, so faint she almost missed it, reached her ears. "You can't escape us, Sarah." With a strangled cry, Sarah leapt from the bed and fumbled for the light switch. As fluorescent light flooded the room, the shadows retreated, leaving no evidence of anything amiss. But Sarah knew. Whatever haunted the Blackwood house had followed her. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's life unravelled. She couldn't hold down a job, her erratic behaviour and constant paranoia making it impossible to function normally. She moved from motel to motel, never staying in one place for more than a few nights, always trying to stay one step ahead of the whispering shadows that seemed to dog her every move. Her friends and family, initially supportive, began to distance themselves as Sarah's tales of supernatural persecution grew more outlandish. She could see the doubt in their eyes, the way they exchanged worried glances when they thought she wasn't looking. Even her parents, after a disastrous visit where Sarah had a breakdown over shadows she claimed were moving on their living room wall, suggested she voluntarily commit herself for psychiatric evaluation. Desperate and alone, Sarah turned to the internet, searching for others who might have experienced similar phenomena. She spent sleepless nights poring over forums dedicated to the paranormal, ghost-hunting websites and occult message boards. It was on one of these sites that she first came across the name Ephraim Blackwood. Blackwood, she learned, had been the original owner of the house, a reclusive figure rumoured to have dabbled in dark magic in the late 1800s. According to local legend, he had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, along with several townspeople who had last been seen entering his property. Armed with this new information, Sarah became obsessed with uncovering the truth about Ephraim Blackwood and the malevolent force that now seemed intent on destroying her life. She returned to her hometown, setting up camp in her car near the Blackwood house, watching and waiting. Days blurred into weeks as Sarah observed the house, taking meticulous notes on every shadow, every unexplained sound. She grew gaunt and dishevelled, her eyes sunken and wild. Locals who recognized her crossed the street to avoid her rambling monologues about whispers and moving shadows. It was a cold, moonless night when Sarah finally decided to re-enter the Blackwood house. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and her desperate need for answers, she picked the lock and slipped inside. The house was silent, filled with the musty scent of abandonment. Sarah moved cautiously from room to room, her flashlight beam dancing across peeling wallpaper and dusty furniture. In the back of her mind, a voice screamed at her to turn back, to run while she still could. But a stronger compulsion drove her forward, deeper into the house's gloomy interior. As she descended into the basement, the whispers began. At first, they were the same indistinct murmurs she'd heard before, but as she reached the bottom of the stairs, they coalesced into clear, horrifying words. "Welcome home, Sarah," they said in unison, their voices a cacophony of malice and hunger. Sarah's scream died in her throat as the shadows surged forward, enveloping her in darkness. The flashlight clattered to the floor, its beam illuminating nothing but empty space where Sarah had stood just moments before. Days later, when the police finally investigated Sarah's disappearance, they found no trace of her in the Blackwood house. Her car, parked nearby, contained notebooks filled with increasingly paranoid ramblings about whispers in the walls and living shadows. The official report cited Sarah Hughes as a missing person, likely having experienced a psychotic break. The Blackwood house stood silent once more, its dark windows revealing nothing of the horrors within. And in the basement, if one listened closely, they might hear the faintest whisper. A new voice added to the chorus of the damned. Months passed, and the Blackwood house fell into deeper disrepair. Teenagers dared each other to spend nights there, only to flee in terror, speaking of whispers and moving shadows. The town council debated demolishing the structure, but plans always fell through mysteriously. One crisp autumn evening, a young couple drove past the house, slowing to observe its dilapidated grandeur. "I heard this place is haunted," the woman said, shivering slightly. Her companion laughed. "Ghost stories to scare kids. It's just an old house." As they drove away, neither noticed the pale face watching from an upstairs window, a face bearing an uncanny resemblance to the long-missing Sarah Hughes. The face smiled, revealing teeth too sharp to be human, before melting back into the shadows. Inside, the whispers grew excited. A "for sale" sign had just been planted in the overgrown front yard. Soon, they would have new souls to torment, new fears to feed upon. And Sarah, or what was left of her, would be there to welcome them. In the basement, hidden behind crumbling walls, lay the true heart of the Blackwood house, an ancient pulsing mass of shadows and malevolence. It had waited nearly 2 centuries for the right soul, and Sarah had proved perfect. Now, with her essence absorbed and her form a mere puppet, the entity's power had grown. As night fell, the Blackwood house seemed to shudder with anticipation. The whispers rose to a fevered pitch, chanting in unison, "Fresh souls to break, fresh fears to take, in shadows deep, forever to keep. Come, come, to the house on Willow Street, where eternal darkness and torment meet." The chant faded, leaving behind an eerie silence. The Blackwood house settled in to wait, patient as ever. After all, in the grand scheme of its existence, what were a few more days or weeks, someone would come. They always did. And when they arrived, the house would be waiting, its doors open wide, promising shelter, but delivering only eternal horror.